Turbo cam, as we all know. Every turbo is a turbo, and every cam is a cam, all that. We're live, 5:26. I'm early tonight. Today, I want to talk about small block Chevys. The reason for that is I get asked this question a lot, and I get it asked more often about than I have about about small block Chevy. But really, whenever I do a video on any kind of dyno testing in the past, whenever I've done tests for the magazines or whatever, and we've run some kind of motor or small block Ford with GT40 heads or that kind of thing. Well, okay, Richard, here's the question. Here's how it gets phrased. Okay, Richard, here's the thing. Here's your request. If you went to the wrecking yard and all you could use is wrecking yard parts, like no aftermarket things, what combination? We're picking small block to start out with. Usually the question is about an LS, and we can talk about LS maybe after this, because it shouldn't take us too long to get through the available combinations that we would do for a small block. There's just not, there are issues, not a lot to choose from there, unfortunately. Let's say you wanted to put together a motor to swap in a car, for it to in a Nova or Camaro or truck or whatever, and you wanted to take it to the drag race and you wanted to do as good as you can. If we're limited to small block and we can't put a big block, because I just get a big block because that would be better, because it's a bigger motor. The ideal thing is get a bigger motor. It's going to make more power. It's going to make more average power. And we're limited in what we can get from a wrecking yard anyways. Unlike Junkyard Wars, which I loved, you're not going to find a brand new $5,000 pill block or whatever that's just magically appears for the thing that you need. That's not there. But there are lots and lots of motors there. And you can occasionally find good things. So let's say that we were looking for a small block Chevy. We want to put together the most powerful small block Chevy. So the question is for you guys, the guys that are here, what would you put together? What would be your go-to combo? Just, you could fill it out in a comment and say, hey, look, I'd pick this and this and this and this and this. So we'll go over what I would pick, and then you guys can add to that, subtract from that, whatever you want to do. Maybe we'll talk about LSs too, because like I said, we'll have enough time to go through all that. So on the small block Chevy side, now, the first thing you do, like I said before with the big block, is if you're looking at big blocks, you don't get a 366 truck motor like Soltec. You don't get a 396. You're not going to find those anyways. You don't get a 427. You just get a 454 and start off with the biggest one. If it's a big block Chevy, you just get the biggest big block Chevy. And that would be ideally the one that you could find anyway. So for a small block Chevy, I'd do the same thing. I would try to find a 400, because while there will be lots of 350s there, and the 350 that you get might even make more power than the 400 that you would get, I wouldn't get all of the 400. I would get the 400 short block. We're going to assume in our hypothetical Junkyard Wars scenario that we're picking a motor that works. So I would get a small block 400. It would be nice to have something that had, high compression, but we're going to solve that. So we get our small block 400. The 400 is not going to have a good cam in it. It's going to have a flat tappet cam also, and not a hydraulic roller cam. So this begs the question, do you make a switch here? Do you create something, some voodoo Frankenstein version of something? Because you could pick a later hydraulic roller block, but you got this one-piece, two-piece seal crank things that are going on, and it's not really gonna interchange. So this is one of the hurdles that we overcome. I'd much rather have a hydraulic roller block so we could have a hydraulic roller cam. Not that I think that the hydraulic roller cam necessarily is going to be any better, but if we're picking a early 1970s small block 400 from somewhere that we found in a wrecking yard, which would be hard to do, by the way, lots and lots of modern 350s in there, but just because it's bigger, because 50 extra cubic inches is going to be like going from a 300-inch small block to a 350-inch small block, and then we go to a 400-inch small block. That's just better average power. We're going to be limited in the kind of cam that we could get from a wrecking yard anyways, unless we get lucky. And you can do this. This does happen. You could find something that has the RV cam in it. There's going to be lots of stuff in there. If you go around the wrecking yard, and I've done this a lot, we've found aftermarket parts on small block Chevys a ton. Lots of times they have headers. Lots of times they have aftermarket intake manifolds, particularly the early carbureted things. Sometimes they have aftermarket carburetors. I've seen Holley carburetors there. And all that's well and good. I don't know if the ones that are there, if I chose one of those that had headers on it, that had an intake manifold, had a carburetor distributor, whatever, some other kind of performance modifications, maybe that has a cam in it. Maybe it has a RV style cam or something, some kind of camshaft in it. So the question becomes, you have a 400, then what heads do you put on it? Well, the best set of heads that you're going to find in a wrecking yard are going to be Vortec heads. Luckily, there's going to be a bunch of those in there. There's going to be trucks that have Vortec L31-ish kind of small blocks in them. Now, do you pick that whole motor? Because it's only 350 inches and not 400, assuming that you could even find a 400. It's only 350 inches, but it has a lot of other good things going for it that are going to create problems if you try to put it on the 400. For one thing, I mean, the heads are going to be great, but then you're stuck with doing a Vortec intake manifold. I don't think you're going to want a fuel injected manifold. You're probably going to want a carbureted manifold. So you got to find a Vortec style carbureted manifold, presumably that had a quadrajet on it and a quadrajet, which would be the way that I would go with my Junkyard style intake manifold choice, unless you could walk around and find something that had aluminum intake manifolds. And like I said, that's not out of the ordinary at all for small block Chevys. When there's a bunch of them there, it's not unusual to find an Edelbrock Performer. I haven't seen really any like nice air gaps there, because we probably would have snagged that. But I have seen Performers and YNs and different kinds of intake manifolds there. And usually, if those are quadrajet manifolds, the quadrajet's usually still there. But if it's a Holley 4150 flange, the Holley carburetor is usually gone. But the manifold sometimes is still there. And sometimes the whole motor is there. I mean, Mark Sanchez found a beautiful like stroker crate motor and like a TCI transmission, and unfortunately, and a fast management. Found all kinds of stuff in this. I think it was in the IROC style Camaro. In one of those, somebody had swapped all of this stuff in, and it turned out to be a really good motor, aluminum headed deal. It was fantastic. So if you could find that, you just get that. But that's few and far between. So we'll assume that we don't have any of these magical Junkyard War style like finds that, hey, look, I just found this like LS6 454 Chevy that happened to be in there. So that's the way that I would go. Then you have to decide, like I said, the hurdles to overcome, or the potential problems that you're going to have mix and matching stuff, is you have the Vortec heads. What kind of cam can you combine with that? Is there an optimum flat tappet cam that you would get from? You're not going to find an LT1 or a DZ302 or an L76 or an L84. You're not going to find any of that stuff in there. That's not going to be there. So if you could find that solid flat tappet camshaft and put it in there, that would be great. That's just not going to happen. So you're going to be stuck with some other kind of cam. Would you want to go with a hydraulic roller from? Because it's not going to retrofit in these older blocks if you have a 400 block. So then that becomes the thing. Would a guy be better off just getting an L31, trying to find an intake manifold for it, and a carburetor and distributor, and put that on there? Would that be the best way to go and make the best average power, let's say? Or would this 400 thing be better, and maybe try to find something that has early fuelie heads on it, and then a regular style, you could put those heads on there? Maybe 194 ones with small chambers, 64cc chambers. Try to get something like that if there are older vehicles there, because you're not going to want to put the 76cc, any of the later smog heads. If you could find another good small block head for that 400, would be awesome. Would be L98 heads. So if you can find a tune port Camaro or a Corvette, probably more than likely, 86 convertible or above, you could get aluminum heads for it. And the great thing about those is those have small chambers. So you could have a 400 with those heads on it. And then actually with the tune port one, that also might be a cam choice. Maybe you could get the, if it's an 85 or pre-roller 86, then you could get a flat tappet cam, put it in that 400. Maybe the tune port cam is going to be better than the cam that's in the 400. I'd have to go down the rabbit hole here and look and see if I could find the specs on both of those to see which one of those might work better. But as carbureted stuff goes, and then conventional 4-barrel intake manifold, quadrajet, a running quadrajet, but stick an HEI distributor, and then probably go on about my business. That's the one that I would pick. So let me know what you guys had come up with. And in terms of the LS, when I get asked on the LS thing, it's the same thing. I'm like, just find the biggest LS that you can. If you can find a 6-liter or a 6.2, you're not going to find a 7-liter, but if you can find a 6.2, and I don't find any of those there, you could get that. Get a 6-liter, take those 317 heads off, put 862 heads on, or 706 heads, or 799 heads. If you can find any of those better heads, put those on there. I would just keep the truck manifold on there. More than likely, if you found a 799 headed thing, manifold on there. In terms of cams, there are lots better cams than an early truck or any of the 4.8 and 5.3 cams. Anything else is going to make more peak power, let's say, than any of those. So, an LQ9 cam, I would stay away from any of the VVT or DOD ones. So it'd have to be some sort of fixed cam. You're not going to find an LS7 or LS9. That's just not going to be an LS3 cam would be great. LS2, LS6, any of those, but those are going to be really, really hard to find. So eventually you're just going to have to do the research and try to see if there's like an L33 camshaft in there, maybe. Like I said, or the LQ9, any of those cams would work. But then you get up into the ones that, in terms of the stock cams, you get into the ones that you're not going to find. You're not going to find you might find an LS1, which is not bad, but I haven't seen any of those really. We don't see LS1s there very often. We don't see any of the aluminum motors. But LS1, 2, 3, 6, you're not going to find any of those camshafts in there. They're just not going to be in the wrecking yards. You might find, just like with the small block Chevys, you might find trucks that have had cam swaps in them. I've had lots of guys tell me, hey, I bought this motor from the wrecking yard, and it turns out it had a Texas speed cam, and it had a BTR camshaft and a cam motion cam, whatever. It had this cam. They didn't know it when they got it, but when they took the valve covers off, hey, look, that has a valve spring upgrade. If it has a valve spring upgrade, good chance that it has a camshaft in it. So all you got to do is pull the valve covers and try to find it and go, hey, look, so if it's got something that's got, got a decent combination looking in there, or something that looks like it's been modified, check the valve, and then maybe it's got a good camshaft in it. You guys got going on? Would you pick an early 70s 400 over the later L31 350? Okay, if you're building a junkyard small block Chevy, would you pick an early 70s 400 over the later L31 350? Let me know in the comments. Or just let me know in the poll. You don't have to let me know in the comments. John's back. What's going on? We're just talking about this. I'm back with a couple Chevys. First Chevy I've owned. I get it now. You're a Chevy guy now. Let's start with Vortec heads. Yep, that's the Fuelie head is the best one. But like I said, I don't know that you're going to find I don't think you're going to find any 202 Fuelie heads in there. 6-liter L6L90 is my go-to combination. Hopefully getting my job done on the F-150 with a 5-liter Coyote motor. That's good. LS3, yeah, be hard to find. Probably try to find 400 crank. The problem with just finding a 400 crank is that you're not going to be able to piece together a 383 stroker out of that, because you won't get the rod and the compression height of the piston right. Putting a Summit 8803 cam, my L31 with a single plane. There you go. And are you sure about the single plane? Really handicapping us with no aftermarket parts. Yep. first car had a 352. My 75 Buick had a 455. 455 also a good choice, or a 500 Cadillac if you're just free to like free range in the junkyard with any kind of combination. Then you just look for the biggest one you could get. You might find a Vortec 350 and a 400 crank and plan on clearancing for 383. That the problem is you don't have an aftermarket. You don't have aftermarket available to you in the wrecking yard in this scenario. Quadrajets are underrated. I've had good luck with them. I think quadrajets are great. If you have a good functioning quadrajet like the one that we just ran on the Pontiacs, those work fantastic. Quadrajet from 454. Yeah, I do see lots of those actually. Got a 78 K20. Love the old quadrajet. The ultimate junkyard small block is an aluminum 5.3. I have a 350 that's built for boost. There's an Edelbrock TBI head on it. So I'm going to install tunnel ram with dual quads. And you're going to do boost with a tunnel ram and dual quads. That's pretty ambitious. I like it. Twin turbo. There's not a lot of information on twin turbo small block Chevys. It works the same as every other twin turbo motor. I have twin turbo small block Chevy stuff up on my channel. We've tested that. I haven't done one with a tunnel ram. And are you going to blow through carburetors? Kind of off topic, no problem. I was watching a couple of videos about intakes and the problem in distribution with nitrous on the LS intake with rectangular ports. You lose power going to something or other. Let's see. Going to aftermarket intakes on an LS3. What would you do in this situation? Well, my first question is, as always, how much power do you want to make? And then what is the rest of the combination? And then what is the issue that we're trying to solve? Like if you're trying to add 100 shot, just add 100 shot to the LS3. If you're trying to add 300 or 400, you need to do something else. 400 small block is 9.3 with a 64cc chamber. The added compression and flow from the Vortec heads make a great stoplight engine. Yeah, that's why we wanted to do it. Found some fun stuff in the junkyard. Suspension upgrades, oil coolers, trans coolers, aftermarket manifolds. There is lots of cool stuff there. I mean, I walked out. I went there to look at big blocks, I remember, and walked out with coilover stuff for a Honda Civic. I was just walking down. I saw it at the end of a row. I'm like, that's an aftermarket suspension on Honda Civic. I definitely have to have that. I don't even know. Oh, I did have a Honda Civic at the time. In fact, I think I gave those to Chad for the Civic VX. I built my daily driver engine with a 350 with a roller block, 395 cam. I don't know what that is. Set of crate engine heads. One of my Vortec heads had a crack. Former intake, headers, and Q-jet. Small block 400. I got one for sale. 383, and now I'm building a 434 with a 671. Nice. I'm thinking the 400, but I heard the Simon boards have cooling issues and hotspots. They don't with the right heads and or cooling mods on the heads and head gaskets. I'm a fan of the Cadillac 500. Also, I know pre-72 heads on later bottom bump compression a lot. They do. The problem with the Cadillacs is that they do not rev, not because it's big, mostly because of valve train. And so stock springs and stock rockers and stuff on a Cadillac are not going to, I mean, it's going to want to make power at like 4,500 or something. It's not very high. John, what's going on? I got a pair of matching 78 squares, both 350s. Paint scheme, same everything. Let's see here. One's a K20, one's a Silverado. Both 4x4s, cool. Forgot I'm using 1:6 ratio rocker arms. Would you be able to find a 71 Corvette or Camaro with an LT1 in the junkyard? No. And if you were going to ask for something, you would ask for a 70 since it's the higher compression one and not the 71 that has lower compression. But yeah, you'll never find that. Would a 6-liter Corvette can be an upgrade and my LH6 aluminum 5.3 worth it, or just spend the money and get a BTR? A 6-liter Corvette cam would be an LS2, which would be better than an LH6 camshaft, but not as much as an aftermarket cam does. I got lucky once and found a TPI with an Edelbrock aluminum heads and a comp cam. Nice. We'll have that in our hypothetical junkyard. Yeah, if you could get that stuff, that'd be really good. Or they are blow through 450s on the tunnel ram. Never seen it done, so I'm gonna try it. You're gonna go through some tuning stuff. What I think I would do is I wouldn't do individual bonnets on them. I would connect them so that you have equal distribution of pressure in both of them kind of at the same time. But that'll be interesting to see. 395 cam is one that GM used in the Ramjet 350. Okay. That's a hydraulic roller cam then, right? Yeah, Sinister made a good point there, Ben. On your 6-liter Corvette cam, we have cams on sale right now. So if you go to richardholdnerperformance.com, you should get a low buck truck cam for that. Or a Ripper or a Truck Plus, whatever you want. It's going to be a lot less than buying the other aftermarket stuff. Take an LT1 just because the aluminum heads and intake can be welded for a big port job. Pour and stroke it to 396. Yeah, you can't do any of that in the wrecking yard. But I forgot about that. You can find LT1s there. And so the LT1, if you could run it fuel injected, let's say in our hypothetical junkyard war scenario, an LT1 would make more power than any of those other small blocks. Available pure junkyard number 1, 400 small block, IROC heads, L98s. Yep. I think isn't an L98 head a smaller chamber than 64 cc's? I thought it was like 58. L69 305 intake. Yeah, that'd be hard to find, but there are lots of carbureted intake manifolds. I don't know that you're going to find. You might find an aluminum Q-jet intake, maybe. Cadillac Quadrajet. I'm going to cheat to say I found a 350 horse 327 cam and left her. Yeah, that would be nice. Vortec 350 dual plane long tubes, 1.6 rockers. That is a good solid combination for a guy. If you had that in a truck or whatever, that's a really good one. Hydraulic roller. Have an L69. I'm pulling for the Vortec. Yeah, a Vortec 350 compared to an L69, the Vortec 350 is going to be better. An L31 would be better than an L69. Because, 350 versus 305 is just like it's a better deal. Although I'm a big fan of the L69. I do like those. Having been forced to race against those when I was doing showroom stock. I just picked up another project, 94 Camaro, got it for 400, only 104,000 miles, engine won't crank. Haven't done anything else behind on my projects. 94. What motor is in that? Is that an LT1? When do they start it? When do they start the LS? Time for spiked eggnog. I'm not a big fan of eggnog. In fact, I'm not a fan at all of eggnog. But a couple people in my family like it. I'm strongly debating LS swapping either the truck or the Suburban. Can't decide. The Suburban already has a cam in it. Some other stuff. Really want to get some experience doing an LS swap, though. It's a good one to practice on. LT1, okay. Swapping from 376 stock bottom end to sleeve 427. Going from a stage 1 cam to a stage 3. Currently on a stock converter. What stall speed should be looking at for the new combination? How much bigger is, I don't know what stage 3 cam you're talking about, but I'm assuming it's probably like 20 degrees bigger or something. But you are going to a bigger displacement. I'm still thinking it's 3,000 or less on the stall. 18,000 miles and didn't run for 15 years. I started it and long run the ran at worse it got. How did the IROC cars compare to your Mustang? Well, back in the day, my Mustang was an 88 LX. So fairly lightweight. It did fairly well, but the 1LE stuff, they didn't ever have power on us necessarily, but they did have the 1LE stuff handled fairly well. But what they did have were Mustang. LS was 98. Okay. Do you like the BTR hot ride cam for a 5.3? I think for me, I think it's a little on the big side for a 5.3. But if you're wanting to rev the thing out, it's not what I would pick for a truck application, certainly. Trying to scroll back and see if Terry had any more information. I think people tend to be happier with and small turbos. That having more low speed power and more boost response usually makes people happy. Front wheel drive 455 from the Tornado was the highest torque rated big block GM ever made. Was it 510 foot-pounds or something? Or was it more than that? Seemed to help it breathe a little better compared. That Tornado, though, wasn't higher than a Cadillac. Concerned installing my Dart 200 heads just to wake it up even more since I don't have a pair of Vortex anymore. Transmission adapter came in today. Very nice. I think I'll post something on it tomorrow. But poor Jimmy got his S2000 together, and whoever ported the head on it, the F-Series head, they ported through to water. So he's going to do the startup today, and they tried to start it up, and it's leaking water. And you could see it. He sent me a video of it. It's coming out the port. It's not good. What spark plugs you recommend on a 5.3? What you got to give me more specifics than that. I would go down. I would go to an 8 probably, or maybe a 7 in terms of heat range. And if it's a stock head, most guys go with a tapered seat, a tier 6 or tier 7 or something. It's fine. We've run gasketed plugs on stock heads too. It's not a big deal. Nothing but no thing. Near. Yeah, let's just get my dang shirt straightened out. Throw a wrench into it. A Ford big block, like we have seen older Ford big blocks in the wrecking yards before, so those would be a good one. A 460 would be good if you're just getting anything. Play the small block Ford Junkyard game tomorrow. So we can talk about that. The first thing I do on a small block Ford is I get a 351. Cobra heads, not Cobra heads, the Explorer heads. Problem is that you're not going to have much of the way, and this is one of the decisions you have to make, like we were talking about the 350 versus the 400 on the small block Ford, is what would you do? I mean, if you're gonna say Windsor, would you is a 400M, is that still a small block? Could you find a Cleveland? Which if you could, that would be the way to go. But again, you're going to be limited in what you can do in terms of camshaft. But for a Windsor, if you decided, hey, look, I'm going to go with a 351, can you find a 351 intake manifold? Is there going to be a carbureted 351 manifold? Are you forced to use the 351 intake? Because you can't use a Cobra. I mean, you can't use the Explorer intake manifold on a 351. You can only use it on a 302. Is the 351 better than having a better intake manifold? The heads are certainly a no-brainer. Definitely, I would get a different camshaft than the 351 truck manifold. I've tried to find one in a Mustang or something. I guess you could go. Maybe you could go with an earlier flat tap one or something. Just let me know. I'm curious to see what other people would do on the Ford side. Can't do a cam swap at the moment, but thinking some rockers might help. RV cam, headers, intake, and carb. Just looking for a little more grunt off the line. I have a brand new 471 blower. I wonder how that would work on a 6-liter LS. Nobody makes an adapter. I've looked. A 471 will bolt on to an adapter just like the 671 will, but it's just not capable of making a whole bunch of power, obviously. How much power do you think that the L31 stock bottom end is good for? I don't know if you put ring gap in it. Are you talking about that? I don't know. I don't know about that block. I haven't read very much about what's going on there. You can turn it up to see. I'm thinking that we've gone 700 or 750 or something on those. Summer Racing said I could get 850 to 1,000 with stock parts and never mentioned ring gap. Don't think 6.5 to 7 pounds of boost is doable without ring gap. Are those two things unrelated? Because 850 to 1,000 horsepower is not 6 or 7 pounds of boost. And here's the problem without ring gap. We've run boost on a lot of stuff without checking the ring gap. And it has worked. But the boost versus doing or not doing ring gap is just a gamble because you don't know what it is. And also the boost level is not related to ring gap if you don't know what it is. And then you also don't know how much temperature you're going to put in. If you ran 7 pounds and you're out doing roll racing on the street, 7 pounds could get you enough ring temperature where you would break a piston. So it's not just people think that ring gap is a boost number, and it's not that at all. It's just ring temperature. And the more temperature that you put in, like the longer that you're in boost and stuff, and other things will affect the ring temperature. And then you don't know what the ring gap is. If your ring gap is 11 or 15 or something, and it's not going to take very much temperature to get it to touch, it's going to break something. So you just don't know. You can easily get to 1,000 horsepower on stock stuff, but with ring gap, not. And if they didn't mention ring gap, it was an oversight on their thing. It's not because they would think that you can do that without doing ring gap, because nobody should tell you that. I'm pretty sure the truck lower and Explorer upper work together. They don't. The truck is different than the Explorer is. I have a 2014 L83 5.3 daily driver, needs a camshaft. I want it to be a DOD delete. Which stage 1 cam could I use and not have to tune it? You're not going to be able to not tune it. If you put a cam in an L83 and get rid of, that's a VVT one. Is an L83 also DOD? At any rate, it's definitely going to need to be tuned. That's terrible. Went from a pocket port job to a jacket port. Friend did that on a 4G63. Have you ever played with a Pontiac overhead cam 6-cylinder? Are they any good? They're not anything compared to any sort of modern inline 6-cylinder, but they're cool because they're cool. Like that trophy 4-cylinder that I have, it's cool just because it's different and weird, and that's the same thing with that 6-cylinder. I had that happen with one of my B series heads. I was putting the motor together for Bonneville and had the same thing. The porting went into water, and the person that did it is very famous. I still give him a hard time about it. Pure Roadmaster. Late L98 Camaro had 4 valve relief flat tops, hydraulic roller cam, had 96 up Vortec heads, stock cam and lifters from an LT1 Camaro, China intake, Q-Jet. That would all work good. Can I get away with less ring gap with a carb? Why do you want less ring gap? Are you talking about a carb and boost? I think I can get my hands on one of those 351 Clevelands. My uncle had one sitting, been there for 30 or 40 years. Yeah, that's cool to get a hold of one of those if you have a family member or whatever that has one. But from wrecking yards, you don't see very many of them. I have seen a couple of them. Have you ever tested a 478 GMV6? I have not. I've heard 1,400 foot-pounds. It's not going to do anywhere near that. it would have to be 478 inches. It'd have to be, what is that, 20 or 30 pounds of boost on that or something like that? Because it's not going to do that NA. But it won't be anywhere near that, especially not a stock one. If you're building a junkyard small block, would you pick an early 70s 400 over the later 351? Most it's 2/3, 1/3 right now. 2/3 picking the bigger motor, which is good. I like Kyle's stuff there. The TBI 350 Roadmaster. Is the TBI motor going to be a hydraulic roller cam? Good water meth will cool your combustion chamber charge and cylinder to a degree. All the things that can reduce E85, usually good. Timing values, cold air going into your turbo, intercoolers, all that stuff is good. Blow through carbureted deals. I guess technically a draw through carbureted deal too. What was I having? I was having a discussion with somebody on draw through stuff, which I still want to try. Thinking about getting the Panda Express running again, but with the Holly setup that I have. I just have to make an intake manifold. If I can do that, if I can get it running with that, then I'm definitely going to put a little turbo on it. We'll see what happens. If you're good at fab work, you can put 2 M90s on a small block Chevy and really get after it. Yeah, you're not going to be able to do that in the wrecking yard. Spider injection, Haas 350 Vortec from the yard. Those manifolds work because I've never tried any of them. Maybe they're the bee's knees. Maybe they're the cat's pajamas. Maybe they're all of that. You could get crazy and because they had like in Junkyard Works, they had welders and all kinds of stuff. So if you have welders, if you have access to that stuff, or grinders or mills or lathes or whatever you have there, and you can build stuff, that would be cool. Because then you could make weird intake manifolds. You could do super richy, crazy tune port intake manifolds with carburetors on them. That didn't seem to work very well. I'm a little surprised and also disappointed that it's not really going the way that we want it to. Supposedly older 350 intakes can't fit the Vortec 350 truck heads. They don't. The intake bolt pattern is definitely different on the small block Chevy heads versus Vortec heads. 4.3 V6 guys are always hating on the spider injection. Yeah, I'm not a fan of the poppet style stuff, but the later ones where they went to individual injectors, that could work better. I'm less interested in the fuel supply side of that than I am about the intake design. I'd like to just see more on what's going on with the, because maybe they did a good job. Maybe they were, well, those were kind of pre-LT1 and not because the LS intake manifold's pretty good. I mean, not the LS4. The LS6 intake manifold's good. LS1, the early LS1, not great. Better than the LS4, but I always wanted to do a draw-through turbo setup with either a Mikuni or a Harley carb, maybe 2 carbs on a 6 or even a V8. It'd take a lot more carburation than either one of those or even 2 of those would do on any kind of LS. Put a carb on a stock intake and see what happens. I have not tried that. I think I have an adapter for that on the LS anyways, but I've not tried that. In fact, if whoever sent me one of those, please let me know. I think I still have the email or the address. I probably should just send it back because I haven't run it yet. On a truck manifold, I think it's to adapt to a truck manifold. It might even be a quadrajet. I mean, if we got it to work on the feeding the blower, I don't know why it wouldn't work on the front of the intake manifold. But I think it should have worked on the tune port too. I've seen crazy long runner tubular intake manifolds like at Bonneville. I don't know. I don't know how they work, but they ran and they made passes in them. I have a bone stock LM7. I'm wanting to put a cheap EV turbo on it. Should I put an aftermarket cam or can I leave the motor all internally stock? You can leave that all stock. A turbo doesn't require a cam. We've run lots of stock cam LM7 5.3s with turbos on them, and it works fine. It just doesn't make as much power at any given boost level as it does with any kind of performance cam. TBI 350 Roadmaster Caprice Olds had the 4 valve relief flat tops like the IROC L98 factory hydraulic roller cams. It'd be cool to see the LS with the carb stock intake and also the L31 and TBI. So a carburetor with a stock truck intake manifold, is that what you're saying? The only benefit it's going to have is some fuel cooling, which could be good. It's also going to displace that. It's going to displace some of the airflow. And then I don't know what the net gain there is going to be. Also, the signal to the carburetor is, I think that the elbow on there was big enough that it put the carburetor up high enough, or maybe that's not going to be a problem. Having a hard time picking a cam for my soon-to-be Turbo 6.2 L92. Any suggestions on picking cam with low-end power and chop? Yeah, our low buck truck camshaft would do all of that. And then what turbo are you putting on there? And then how much power are you trying to make? It doesn't matter because I'm hoping that you sized your turbo to make whatever power that is. And then the cam you're picking is just, hey, what do I want my cam to do as a cam in my 6.2? Because, that's what cams do. The turbo is going to be that's going to be the thing that makes the power. Be cool to see what happens. Might be a shade tree, but I knew a guy who put a 4-barrel carburetor on a Vortec by cutting the intake bolt holes into slots. Seemed to work. There are 4-barrel intake manifolds for Vortec heads. That we've already run that a whole bunch, so that's already a thing. So you can easily do that. You can also configure the other manifold by drilling the head or maybe slotting it or whatever. They're different enough because they're at a different angle too. I wonder if the LS4 intake was designed to save the transmission. That's possible. I want to install an LS in my 94 GMC. The automatic transmission received the speed information from the LS computer unit to shift gears. I don't know. I don't know how is the trans controller separate on when you're swapping the motor in? And because I don't know what transmission do you have in the 94? Is it early enough to have a 700 R4 or is it a 4L60? Since we're on the Junkyard theme, have you ever salvaged Junkyard turbo for a Franken build? Yeah, we've used Junkyard turbos before, but that was long ago. We don't usually do that anymore because you don't know what you're getting. You don't know how good a shape it is. And turbos are inexpensive. Like new turbos are inexpensive. So I just get the turbo. And also you're limited in what you can get for Junkyard turbos. I mean, we've done lots of stuff with, let's put 2 T-Bird or SVO turbos on a 5-liter. Okay, that's great. And it does make boosts and does happy things. They're just limited in their size for how much power you can make. Like on a stock 5-liter or on a cam 5-liter, it was okay because you're not asking it to make, 400 or 500 horsepower, whatever. It's not very much. So that's not a problem. But finding turbos that are big enough to actually make power, because even if you go to diesel stuff, those are designed for high pressure ratios because they run lots of boost, but a diesel engines like factory ones don't make a lot of horsepower. So they don't have a lot of flow. They got a lot of pressure ratio, but not a lot of flow, which is not going to be ideal for a gas engine. You can put 2 of them on there, but then because they're so big that they don't respond very well, it's just easier to just go get a cheap turbo from eBay or Amazon or wherever. Uh, 750 wheel horsepower, very easy. Just get one of our G42 turbos, get the low buck truck camshaft, get springs, get the injector. That's very, very easy. And on that came with that motor, with that turbo, because you have a 6.2, it's going to be really, really responsive too. And plus you have more room, you have a lot of room to grow beyond that 750 number. 350 Vortec lower intake manifold looks like it'd be cool with 2 carbs mounted on it instead of the plastic piece from the factory. Oh, the EFI one, yeah. The old BOP roller engines seem to make a lot of torque. Had a Riviera smoke the front tires. I don't think there's a top speed on those cars. It just get pulling. What's a BOP roller engine? I don't know what roller is. Because none of the 455 stuff, none of those were roller cam ones. Diesel hot slides generally seem kind of big for gas motors, in my opinion. It definitely does, because they're, like I said, they're designed for, usually the diesel motors are usually fairly big in displacement. And it's just the wrong combination of stuff. Middle putting a Junkyard Vortec 5.3 with a Junkyard 4L60E and a Junkyard TVS 1900 and my 91 S15 Sonoma. Very cool. Where did the supercharger come from? Did it come from a Range Rover or Jaguar or something? Here's a fun fact. When you take the plastic lid off of Vortec 305 350, the lower intake is a cross ram. Lower intake looks like a Z28 cross ram and the 82 to 84 crossfire intake manifolds. I've seen those, which is why I wondered if you did a plate on it or you could do something cool to, make it fun. A lot of guys put the marine intake on the Vortec to keep EFI. It's just a noisemaker at the moment until I pipe it in. Okay. 5-liter Range Rover Sport. Yeah, those are cool. And I do see those I have seen those in the wrecking yards. Not unusual, not throwing shade, but Jaguars and Range Rovers, not uncommon to see them in wrecking yards. What's the most lift 5.3 can handle before piston to valve clearance is an issue? Well, Terry came to the right place. Lift has almost nothing to do with that. The piston to valve clearance is all duration. By the time you get to maximum lift with your cam, the piston's already way down in the hole. So you don't have to worry about that. But the duration definitely affects it. So somewhere in the 230, 35 intake duration at 50 is where you run into problems. If you have a stock head, you're not going to be going much over 600 lift anyways, because there's really no sense in doing that. Street driven 351 Windsor, good heads and a cam, low revving like 6,000. Would you do a high ram EFI single plane or buy a dual plane and have converted for EFI? If you want it, are you interested in low speed torque? And what kind of cam are you having in it? So if you already know what kind of cam you're having in it, then I'll pick the intake manifold. We'll pick the intake manifold to match the cam. A high ram is going to be problematic with a lot of hood, so I don't know if you're going to be able to do that. Single plane, almost never, almost always a dual plane, particularly if it's 6,000 RPM and less, a dual plane. But the dual plane is going to be problematic in terms of the amount of fabrication you're going to have to do to get it to work with EFI. I have under 2,500 on the entire build. That's good. Aluminum plate on the top of the L31 with a carb spacer might be a cool test. Yeah, and you wouldn't just do one, right? I mean, you do 2 carburetors on it. It'd be the new L83. It'd be the new cross ram, right? On stage 1 cam, actually, that manifold would be a lot easier to do a blower lid on, right? I mean, wouldn't that be easier to? Although, where's the? Have to be a carbureted blower, but I have that already. On the stage 1 cam to stage 3 stall question, it'd be an additional 10 to 15 degrees of intake duration on the current cam. And stock converter tugs a bit and drive at stop. Yeah, 2800 is still my answer. Anderson N71 with AFR 185 is just a street car, so I figure I want the torque. Okay. Scrolling. Yeah, I don't know what the specs are on the Anderson cams, but I'm assuming they're what everybody else has used for years and years, but they seem to work well. What would you recommend for an aggressive street cam for a K20? I want basically a stoplight engine that can wrap to 5,500 to 6,000. Is this still a small block Chevy, John? Don't forget to hit the thumbs up. Oh, Hayden Smith. That's what I was looking at. Oh, a 351. Okay, you have a 351 with AFR heads. Street car, so you want torque. So, like I said, I don't know what the specs are on that. I'm guessing that it's 224, 232-ish in that range or less. So I would go with the RPM air gap if you have that. And then I would, if you're going to go with fuel injection, go with fuel injection. You could also go with I'd like to see the high ram if it will fit. It would be cool. And it's not going to be terrible down low. I don't know what your transmission situation is like or your gearing. Why not just keep adding carbs till it stops making power? It'd be cool to see four barrels. Yeah, that's not. I mean, it doesn't work that way. It just makes the same power, and then eventually becomes that there's no signal to the carburetors. It would be like the 6-cylinder that I ran. We ran a 1 barrel, and then a 2 barrel, and then a 4 barrel, and then a Dominator by stacking adapter plates on it. Sorry, headers, intake, carb so far. So it's a small block Chevy, John. Does that what we come with? So if you want to run out to 6,000 on a 350, if that's what it is, if it's got a dual plane intake manifold, then 650 or 750 carburetor long tube headers, you're going to get a cam that's like a 224, 232, or 230, or a 218, 224 kind of thing. Do you like any of the Cam Motion cams? Yeah, the guys at Cam Motion do a really good job. They have lots of good cams, as do everybody. Texas Speed, Comp, BTR, everybody has cams that work well. The cam isn't a function of the manufacturer's name. It's just, are the specs right for what you're trying to achieve with the motor? And I think that's now, John, I think Summit has some good cams. I don't know if if your motor is a flat tappet motor or if it's a hydraulic roller motor, but Summit has a bunch of small block Chevy cams now, so you can find something that's kind of in that range. Will Deca 80 support 800 horsepower pump gas? Yes, it will. I missed the poll. What would make a 400 small block? The poll is still up there, so you can still vote. Missed the poll. What would make a 400 small block more reliable than a 5.7 Vortec? We didn't ask about reliability. We just asked which one is going to make more power. What would be the question was, what would be your go-to combination for just building something in the junkyard? If you're building a junkyard small block, would you pick the early 400 over the L31 350? Would you pick the heads that are better on the 350 with a smaller displacement, or would you pick the bigger motor and try to put heads on it? We went over all this at the beginning. Saw you were live. Was watching your 2-valve Mustang videos. I was just reading about on the 4.6 valve situation. I'm surprised that Admiral's not here. The guys from who are the guys? And they're like in Arizona or New Mexico. I've run their big block heads before. They have 2-valve heads. They have 4.6 valve heads that are ported and are supposed to flow pretty well. Somebody throw out some cylinder head names out there. They're fairly inexpensive ones. I can't remember their names. It's not Speedmaster. It starts with an M, maybe. Not Pro Max, that's who it is. Pro Maximum, they have 4.6 valve heads, so that might be another option over the trick flow ones, or over ported stock ones. 350 flat tappet. I saw those on Summit. Have some concern on the lifters though. Who should I use for lifters? I don't know about the lifter situation, and I know that a lot of the cams that Summit has, they've not been tested, so I don't know. I don't know that they've been dyno tested yet, so I don't have any data on them. We run a 6.2 out of a Raptor. I have not. Why did 4-barrel velocity stack seem to go away? I remember when I was young, it seemed like that was the thing to have. Or those old triangle foam air filters. Yeah, the triangle foam air filter, I had one of those on my Camaro, and they work well. The problem is that you shouldn't be just grabbing underhood hot air. And also the triangle foam ones, because when you close the hood, if the hood is right next to the top of that filter, it's restrictive for the filter. That's why the side element ones with a chrome top look cool, but also they're grabbing air from the sides. We did a bunch of testing on different filter designs when I was doing the Engine Masters competition, and we found some particular drop base things that we could use because there were some limitations in, I think, the air cleaner assemblies. And we found some of those because we tried a bunch of those because, you're testing without a carburetor or whatever. I mean, without a air cleaner, and then you put the air cleaner on, you're like, okay, I've dialed in my combination. Now we put that on. Now we got to make that work. And then we try a bunch of bases and lids and filter elements and that kind of stuff because we had to run an air filter on it. Definitely 400, 409, have an old school bus. Yeah, small block, though. We were looking at only small blocks, and the 409 is definitely a big block. Definitely big blockage. Ooh, look, I can buy Ozempic. Yeah, no thanks. I'm good. Got one more minute. 63% saying yes. 37% saying negative on the 400. It'd be weird. I kind of like the combination there on the LT1 stuff. I think that would be, I forgot about that small block. That's the best small block ever, right? That reverse cooling system stuff. But I like the combination of the TBI setup and then the small heads. I thought that the L98 heads were 58 cc's or something. For some reason. Yeah, it says 58 cc's on the L98 aluminum heads. 160 cc intake runners for an 87 Corvette. I thought that they were small because I remember that was problematic for some of the guys trying to put them on, because I remember GM first offered those over the counter, that for a lot of the flat top guys and certainly for dome guys, you couldn't put those heads on there because it was just way too much compression, especially when we didn't have good fuel. Been down the rabbit hole on stock limiter combos for a while. ETs are incredibly good in stock, but optimized combinations, cam durations they use are crazy. Yeah, they definitely are. I mean, they're amazing. I remember I've only been around a few of those, and these were LS based ones. And yeah, the cams are gigantic in terms of the duration that they have. And it's amazing how much power that they're making. But the power really isn't the thing. I mean, that's part of it. They're doing that, and they're making really good power from the things that they're using. But also everything else on the car is actually absolutely optimized. I mean, look at the 60 foots on those cars. Look what they run. Look how consistent they are. All of that's really, really amazing. Didn't the 400 have a weird stroke related cylinder wall wear pattern? Why not just build a 383 that's close enough to the same power output and seemingly more reliable? Well, for one thing, you can't build a 383 in the wrecking yard, and that was really the question. And a 400 will make more power than a 383 does because it's 17 bigger. Air filter test was a great show. People don't like the 400 because of steam ports. Rather have the 400 than a 383. You're just building a fake 400. I know you're a D-stroke 400. It's not D-stroke, but it's debored. Look up an 88 IROC L98 heads. They are iron. No, I know on the iron heads they are. I had an 85 Corvette with iron heads on it. And we had a lot of iron-headed Camaro motors, tune port motors at Westech, both 305 and 350, and the 350s were definitely Camaro ones. But the aluminum heads were the ones that I would get. I wouldn't get an iron IROC head because you're probably not going to find that. But I did find aluminum L98 heads in the wrecking yards when I was looking around. And plus 58 cc's. It's like that's a big jump. That's going to be another half point in compression for all that big power on your 400. Forgot about that. A 400 with those heads would be good. I mean, I don't think they flow exceptionally well. They probably don't flow as much as the Vortec heads do, but they are aluminum. And, we're adding lightness, which is the same thing as power. Because then you can have an aluminum small block. But I do like the idea of having a better camshaft in it. How does anybody know, Kyle, do you know how I'd have to look this up and see how the LT1 cam compares to the tune port, to the L98 cam? Are they similar? Are they different? Is one of them better than the other one? Let's see. It says that they're different. I could call Jim and ask him. People arguing about dumb things. I'm just asking. I was asking about the cam specs, and they are not providing that. I wonder what a super stock cam looks like. So you can get out of it. I'm amazed at some of those cars that are running with quadrajet intake manifolds and stock cylinder heads and stuff. It's pretty impressive. LT1 was the hottest small block cam. Just have to smack the dowel pin in. LT4 was slightly bigger, but meant for 1.6 rockers. I was thinking that the LT1 cam was better, but I couldn't find the specs right off the top of my head. What cam would you run with a small block 400, 9.5 to 1, 220 heads, Holley high RAM, and a 3rd gen? Are you driving this car around, Troy Michaels, or is it just a drag race car? And I don't know what piston you have. Do you have valve reliefs to put a big cam in it? Do you want a big cam where it makes a lot of power? Because you have enough. I mean, the intake manifold that you have and the cylinder heads that you have and the displacement that you have, the compression's not ideal, obviously, for making lots of power. But 9.5 to 1 can still make a lot of power with a big cam. Because those heads will support a lot. I mean, those could be 300 CFM heads. Streetcar. All of that is boosted. It's a high RAM EFI. I think I'd put it like a 230, 236 cam in it then. Down LT1 or Roadmaster wagon. Yeah, we see those. Just saw your live earlier today. Stock limiter guys are a secret bunch. The only information you can find is. Yeah, it's cool. I mean, it is cool stuff, and rightfully so. They should be secretive about the things that they're doing to try to keep themselves competitive. On that note, it is time to go. I did find one of the viewers has one of those low dollar twin turbo V6 things, or not twin turbo, single turbo V6 kits, and so we're horse trading some stuff, which is good. So I'm definitely going to run that on the V6 and see what happens. We'll find out. We will find out. Good times. And I might hit up somebody, maybe Aces or one of those guys, because people have been asking me if I ever used Aces fuel injection, and I haven't. But I might hit somebody up to use one of the 4-hole throttle body things just to make life easier for me, so that I don't have to do a blow through carburetor. I don't think Evan at West Tech Performance, I don't think that they have that carb shop blow through carburetor anymore. I think that left with the owners of West Tech. Sad, because I ran a lot of tests with that thing. But so I think maybe a fuel injection thing would be kind of cool. I kind of would like to use a Holley one because we have the Holley fuel injection, and I know how to use it. It's really easy. We can get it all tuned out, which would be cool. But we'll see. We'll find out. Thank you guys all for showing up. I will see you guys all tomorrow.